Prynhawn da pawb. Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Scott, Strategic Director in Estyn, and it's lovely to see you all this afternoon. Bienvenue, willkommen, bienvenido, croeso, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon on the work that we've done to look at how schools are teaching international languages. So welcome to this Estyn live session. First, a bit of housekeeping. Some of the session is going to be in Welsh. So we have got an English language interpretation available. So to enable this, click on language and speech up at the top, choose language interpretation, and then choose to listen in English. And then hopefully you'll have a lovely translation as some of our session is in Welsh. So thank you all for joining us today. In this session, we'll hear from Matthew Jones, HMI, who was the author of our recent thematic report on international languages in schools in Wales. This report examined the teaching and learning of international languages in primary, secondary and all age schools, and you'll hear a short summary of the findings from Matthew today. We're also going to pop a link to the full report in the Q&A part of that you can see on your screen. If you'd like to look back at it in detail, hopefully some of you have already read it. Hopefully some of you have already had a look at some of the other resources we've produced to go with it, and really grateful of your interest to come and listen to some of the detail tonight. So we're thrilled to welcome our guests tonight. We've got Siwan David, head teacher of Ysgol Pencae, and Aled Thomas, deputy head there. And we've got Jess Jenkins, head of international languages at Cowbridge School. So thanks all for taking the time to come and share some of your really exciting practice that's happening in your schools. If you've got any questions today, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A box, and we'll try our best to answer as many as possible. Don't feel you have to wait. You can add them in as soon as you want to, and we'll have some points during the session where we'll get to those. So I'm going to hand over now to Matthew, who's going to take us through a summary of the main messages from the report. So over to you, Matthew.
Diolch, Jessa. Prynhawn da chi gyd. So today I'm going to be sharing some key messages from our recent thematic report on the teaching and learning of international languages in Wales. The report was commissioned by Welsh Government and was published earlier this year in July. Its purpose is to provide insight into how international languages are taught in primary, secondary and all-age schools, and to highlight strengths, challenges and areas for development. Our evidence base was wide-ranging. We conducted 3 national surveys, we visited over 30 schools and held discussions with teachers, leaders, pupils and wider stakeholders. The review focused on 4 key areas: the primary phase, the secondary phase, promoting and understanding the importance of learning languages, and leading and improving international languages. So if we could move on to the next slide. In the primary phase, many schools have made positive strides since international languages were integrated into the curriculum for Wales in 2022. Most of the schools we visited were focusing on developing pupils' speaking and listening skills and broadening cultural understanding. However, in the primary phase, curriculum design and delivery were inconsistent. Some schools struggled with staff confidence, limited curriculum time, and a lack of professional learning opportunities. And transition arrangements into the secondary phase remain limited and do not focus closely enough on pupil progress. In the secondary phase, provision varied considerably. Where it was strong, teachers made excellent use of authentic resources, creative strategies, and digital tools to bring languages to life. These approaches helped pupils develop both knowledge and enthusiasm. But too often, we found over-reliance on teacher support, limiting pupils' independence as language learners. A continuing challenge is uptake. despite good practice in years 7 to 9, the numbers of pupils choosing international languages at GCSE and A-level remain stubbornly low. Contributing factors include curriculum time constraints, a perception that languages are difficult, and the pressure of the options process. There is also inequity in what courses are available to pupils across Wales. Moving on to the next slide, turning to pupil attitudes, many learners told us they enjoyed studying international languages, particularly for travel, communication, and employment opportunities. But as they moved through school, enthusiasm often declined. Some lacked confidence in their ability, while others questioned the relevance, of studying another language as they already learn Welsh and didn't understand the benefits of learning an international language alongside learning Welsh. Finally, leadership emerged as a decisive factor. In schools where leaders prioritised international languages, we saw high-quality teaching, clear progression routes, and valuable enrichment opportunities. But in many cases, languages were not seen as a strategic priority. This often resulted in weaker or patchy provision and with poor collaboration across phases. Teacher recruitment and sustainability also remain pressing challenges. While initiatives such as the Global Futures campaign provide valuable support, schools reported variability in access to resources and professional learning. Longer-term planning and system-wide coordination will be key if international languages are to thrive again in Wales. So in summary, there is strong evidence of commitment and innovation in parts of the system. Yet overall, provision remains inconsistent and take-up of languages is low. Sustained leadership, better transition arrangements between the primary and the secondary phase, and continued support for teachers will be critical if international languages are to flourish. So a quick reminder that the link to the full copy of the report is in the chat, and you will also see links to self-evaluation toolkits, one for primary colleagues and one for secondary colleagues that you may well find useful. So I'm going to hand back to Jassa now, who will introduce two of the schools featured in the report so that you can hear how they are successfully delivering international languages in their schools. Thanks, Jassa.
Diolch, Matthew. It was lovely to hear some of the main messages there, some really positive things, but clearly some work to do, and particularly for those of us who are passionate about languages to try and stem that lack of flow through into the study at higher levels. Okay, I'm going to turn now to Siwan and to Aled to tell us a little bit about the work that they've been doing in Ysgol Pencae. So diolch dros i ti.
Diolch yn fawr am y croeso a phnawn da I bawb. Mae'n braf gallu rhannu taith Ysgol Pencae wrth addysgu ieithoedd rhyngwladol gyda chi heddiw. Felly, I gychwyn, dyma chydig bach o gyd-destun yr ysgol. Ysgol un ffrwd ydyn ni yn ardal Llandaf o Gaerdydd, ac mae 207 o ddisgyblion ar y gofrestr. Ar hyn o bryd, mae disgyblion o flwyddyn 3 hyd flwyddyn 6 yn dysgu iaith rhyngwladol fel rhan o'i cwricwlwm. Ein gweledigaeth ni fel ysgol ydy rhoi brofiad i'n disgyblion ni o oedran cynnar iawn I fwynhau ieithoedd. Rydyn ni eisiau iddyn nhw fod yn frwdfrydig o ddysgu iaith. Rydyn ni eisiau iddyn nhw wneud cysylltiadau rhwng ieithoedd. Hynny yw, os mae berf yw'r rhedeg yn y Gymraeg, mae'r rhedeg yn ferf ym mhob iaith. Rydyn ni eisiau iddyn nhw fod yn ddigon hyderus I ddangos annibyniaeth yn y ffordd maen nhw'n dysgu a chymhwyso'r iaith a chael profiadau byw o'r ieithoedd. Ac wrth gwrs, rydyn ni eisiau iddyn nhw deimlo mwynhad wrth ddysgu ieithoedd mwyn gobeithio tyfu I fod yn ddinasyddion sydd am groesawu ieithoedd ar hyd eu hoes. Felly, mae'r daith wedi bod yn un hir yn Ysgol Pencae ac mae wedi hen gychwyn cyn I Aled a finne ymuno yn yr ysgol. Dechreuodd y ddarpariaeth tua 2010 pan oedd athrawes Ffrangeg o'r ysgol uwchradd yn dod i'r ysgol am awr yr wythnos i addysgu blwyddyn 6. Parhaodd hyn tan tua 2018 pan oedd rhaid addasu oherwydd yn anffodus goblygiadau cyllid. Yn lwcus roedd gennym ni aelod o staff a oedd yn siarad Ffrangeg yn rhugl a chydweithiodd hi mewn gweithgor gyda Consortiwm Canolbarth y De i ysgrifennu cynllun ysgol gyfan Ffrangeg. Sylfaen y cynllun hwn ydy bod y disgyblion yn gwneud cysylltiadau rhwng ieithoedd, mae'r elfen llafar yn gref ac mae'r disgyblion yn gorddysgu patrymau mwyn datblygu hyder a'r gallu i gymhwyso sgiliau. Dechreuodd haf ein athrawes ni a ddysgu 20 munud yr wythnos fel rhan o ddarpariaeth CPA yr ysgol. Yn lwcus, daeth cyfle eto i fod yn rhan o weithgarwch clwstwr, ble roedd blwyddyn 5 a 6 yn derbyn sesiynau ar-lein gan athrawon Almaeneg a Ffrangeg Ysgol Glantaf. Mae'r sesiynau yma yn parhau hyd heddiw. Daeth newid i'r ysgol yn 2023 wrth i ni golli ein harbenigedd Ffrangeg. Felly, roedd y cynllun yn cael ei addysgu erbyn hyn gan athrawon nad oedd yn rhugl yn yr iaith. Roedd hyn yn dod â her newydd, ond mae'n diolch yn fawr i'r athrawon am groesawu'r cyfle a mynd amdani. Llynedd, yn dilyn myfyrio, dyma ni'n penderfynu bod lle ni ymestyn ymhellach, a bod 20 munud bob pythefnos erbyn hyn oherwydd strwythur CPA ddim yn ddigon. Felly, rydyn ni wedi plethu gweithgareddau Ffrangeg i mewn i'n cylch darllen wythnosol ac mae hyn wedi profi'n hynod effeithiol. Mae'r daith yn parhau ac edrychwn ymlaen i weld beth fydd yn diwygiad nesaf ni wrth i'r disgyblion a'r staff fod yn fwy hyderus. Mae Aled nawr am sôn am y math o weithgareddau mae'n disgyblion ni yn Ysgol Pencae yn ei cwmfwlhau.
Pnawn da bawb. Felly fel mae Siwan wedi sôn, ni'n ffodus iawn o fanteisio ar arbenigedd yr uwchradd gyda Ysgol Glantaf yn cynnig gwersi hanner awr wythnosol i ni fel ysgolion y clwstwr gyda'r ffocws ar Almaeneg a Ffrangeg bob yn ail blwyddyn. Felly mae'n gyfle i ehangu dealltwriaeth a ieithoedd rhyngwladol cyn bod nhw'n parhau ddatblygu hynny ymhellach yn yr uwchradd. Felly mae gwersi blwyddyn 5 a 6 wedyn yn aml iawn yn deillio o wersi yr wythnos flaenorol, enghraifft, pe bai lliwiau yn cael eu cyflwyno mewn un wythnos, byddai hynny wedyn yn bwydo i fewn i gylch darllen yr wythnos ganlynol. Ni'n rhoi ffocws ar trydydd iaith yn ein cylchoedd darllen ni ar frig yr ysgol os ydynt wedi dangos eu bod nhw wedi meistroli'r ail iaith hynny. Fel sydd wedi cael ei sôn eisoes, mae annibyniaeth yn bwysig iawn yn fan hyn i roi dewis i'r plant sut mae nhw am ddysgu. Byddai'r rhai plant wrth eu bod yn ysgrifennu sgwrs rhwng ffrind ac yna'n recordio'r sgwrs, eraill yn hoff o ddysgu ac yn dysgu'n well ar ffurf gêm efallai, ac eraill hyd yn oed yn defnyddio eu sgiliau animeiddio mwyn dangos y berthynas rhwng y Gymraeg, y Saesneg ac Almaeneg. Ac wrth gwrs mae'r debygrwydd rhwng y dair iaith. Ac wrth gael dewis mae'r plant yn dysgu'n well ac yn sicr yn enyn i'ch chwilfrydedd nhw. Ac yna islawr ysgol, fel rhan o ffocws gwersi CPA yn datblygu Ffrangeg, rydym fel ysgol yn dilyn ein cynllun Ffrangeg ni, ac yn bythefnosol wedyn, ni'n cynnwys y gweithgareddau Ffrangeg yma yn ein cylchoedd darllen yn blwyddyn 2, 3 a 4. Yn ogystal â hynny, ni fel ysgol yn cynnal cylch croeso boreol ac yn achlysurol ar ddyrnodau arbennig fel dyrnodau Bastil neu yn ystod ein wythnos rhyngwladol ni, ni'n gofyn iddyn nhw i ddweud ac yn newid y cylch i fod gyda'r ffocws ar y Ffrangeg sydd yn gofyn iddyn nhw wedyn i esbonio sut maen nhw'n teimlo drwy'r Ffrangeg. Ac wrth gwrs, wrth gael mynediad i'r iaith, mae'n bwysig ymarfer ar lafar ac ydyn yn gweithio ar lefel gair, wrth ynganu geiriau penodol fel chi'n gallu gweld ar y sgrin, ac yna'n adeiladu ar hynny mwyn recordio sgyrsiau fwy llawn fel petai yn hun yn yr ysgol. A ni'n hefyd iawn o gael cymuned hynod o gefnogol gyda chefndir rhyngwladol i'r ysgol. Felly ar y sleid nesaf, mae rhieni gyda ni sy'n dod o Ffrainc, yr Ariannin, Sbaen, yr Almaen, China, ac mae'n nhw wrth eu bodd yn dod i fewn i'r ysgol i gynnal sesiynau boed yn darllen llyfr o'i mamiaeth nhw neu ddysgu geirfa yn ystod dathliadau penodol. Felly, hefyd, ni'n byw mewn dinas sydd yn amlddiwylliannol, ac fel rhan o'n wythnos ffoduriaid ni, fe groesawon ni aelodau newydd o gymuned Caerdydd sydd wedi ffoi o wledydd fel Affganistan a Syria, lle daethon nhw fewn i'r ysgol i ddysgu ieithoedd nhw, sef Arabeg yn y sefyllfa yma. Ond nid yw'r unig yr iaith sy'n bwysig. Mae'n bwysig bod y plant yn cael blas o ddiwylliant y gwledydd yma, ac yn bendant o bod diwylliant mae brwdfrydedd nhw'n tanio hyd yn oed yn fwy wrth ddysgu iaith newydd. Felly ni'n hoff o'n wythnosau ysgol gyfan, ac mae wythnos ryngwladol yr ysgol sydd yn digwydd yn blynyddol yn dysgu plant am draddodiadau ar draws y byd, o Brasil i'r Almaen o Ffrainc i Tsieina, a mae hyn hefyd yn gyfle euraidd i gyflwyno ieithoedd modern a'i cymharu nhw gyda'r Gymraeg. I ni'n edrych yn gyson am gyfleoedd i sicrhau pwrpas a chyfleoedd go iawn i dysgwyr ni, fel bod nhw'n gweld pwrpas i'r ieithoedd rhyngwladol a'r ffaith bod medru mwy nag un iaith yn agor drysau amrywiol. I ni'n edrych am gyfleoedd i gystadlu mewn cystadlaethau rhyngwladol, enghraifft cystadlu yng Nghystadleuaeth the French Institute UK, wrth greu fideo cerddorol. Fe lawnsiwyd llyfr arbennig yn yr ysgol yn ddiweddar gyda Mr Drakeford yn dod fewn i'r ysgol yn lawnsio'r llyfr Cymraeg Ffrangeg gyntaf erioed sef y tywysog bach, gyda ffipyn o sylw'n amlwg ar y digwyddiad hynny. I ni wedi hefyd cyfeillio gyda'r ysgol yn Llydaw, ac mae'r plant yn danfon yn ôl ac ymlaen yn rheolaidd, danfon e-byst ac yn danfon fideos mwyn hybu'r Gymraeg a'r Ffrangeg yn y ddwy ysgol. A ni wedi creu cysylltiadau gwerthfawr gyda'r llysgennad Ffrangeg hefyd, lle mae wedi mynychu'r ysgol ar amryw o achlasuron erbyn hyn, ac ni'n defnyddio'n plant ni wedyn i gyflwyno gwasanaeth a hynny yn y Gymraeg ac yn Ffrangeg. Mae'r ysgol hefyd wedi paru gyda Phrifysgol Caerdydd sydd yn cynnig clwb Mandarin yn ystod amseroedd cino, ac eto yn gyfle arbennig i'r plant i ehangu ar y dealltwriaeth o'r iaith hynny, ond hefyd ar ddiwylliant Tsieina yn y broses. Ond yn bwysicach yn y byd, rydyn ni am ni'n dysgwyr ni fwynhau ieithoedd modern gan enyn i chwilfrydedd nhw i eisiau dysgu mwy. Unwaith maen nhw'n gweld y drysau sydd yn medru agor yn sgil bod yn ddwy, yn dair ieithog, yna bendant mae brwdfrydedd nhw'n tanio. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch Siwan ac Aled ar diddorol iawn. Dwi'n siŵr os mae unrhyw un yn cael cwestiwn ar gyfer Siwan a Dafydd am beth dych chi wedi clywed. Mae cwestiwn i fi falle i ddechrau. Dych chi wedi disgrifio sawl pethau yna dych chi'n wneud yn yr ysgol, ond beth dych chi'n meddwl wedi gweithio efallai gorau i annog dysgwyr i ddefnyddio'r iaith daged yn annibynnol ac yn naturiol? Pa fath o bethau wedi gweithio gyda hyn?
Fi credu wrth i ni ystyried annibyniaeth y plant wrth ddefnyddio'r iaith, yn sicr mae'r ffaith bod gennym ni gysondeb yn mynd o flwyddyn 3 ar y funud, gobeithio'n iau yn y dyfodol, ond mae'r ffaith bod nhw'n cael ei addysgu o flwyddyn 3 a bod nhw'n adeiladu ar y sgiliau yna o flwyddyn i flwyddyn, mae'r hyder yn datblygu, ac mae plant o fod yn dysgu iaith mor ifanc, dyn nhw mofn methu, a maen nhw wir yn mwynhau yr her o allu siarad iaith gwahanol. Yn aml iawn, maen nhw well na ni, felly mae hwnna hefyd yn rhoi ysgogiad iddyn nhw. Ond maen nhw'n eofn, ac felly pan maen nhw'n cael y profiadau ymarferol, prin iawn o ysgrifennu maen nhw'n wneud, ond maen nhw'n cael profiadau ymarferol, lle maen nhw'n gallu dangos eu personolaethau nhw a defnyddio eu ieithoedd nhw. A beth ni'n gweld ydy mae'r balchder yna mor amlwg, a wedyn mae hwnna'n sbarduno'r annibyniaeth. Oedd y wers oedd Aled yn cyfeirio at fe, lle oedd y plant yn animeiddio, oedd e mor naturiol iddyn nhw drosi o un iaith i'r llall. Mae ar lefel syml iawn, ond mae'r hyder yna a cysylltiadau yna, maen nhw'n eofn a maen nhw wrth ei boddau.
Dwi'n gallu clywed yn y llais ti fod yr egni a'r passion ar gyfer y gwaith, so diolch yn fawr. Matthew, dwi'n siŵr os dych chi eisiau gofyn unrhyw beth. I don't know if you want to ask anything.
Diolch, Shasta. Yes, diolch, Siwan and Aled. I was interested particularly in what you talked about with that sort of involvement with Ysgol Glantaf. And, you know, having visited many schools now across Wales as part of this work, one of the key issues that we kept on coming up against was the lack of transition arrangements as pupils we're now starting to do more international languages in the primary phase, and then in many schools they'd arrive in year 7 and then just start all over again. So I was just wondering, I do appreciate that it's early days, whether you were even sort of thinking or talking about progress with Ysgol Bont Faen and how you were sort of planning that transition from a progress point of view, if at all as yet.
Felly, na i ateb yn Gymraeg os mae'n iawn. Felly, ar hyn o bryd, fel ysgol, ni wedi bod yn gweithio gyda Glan Taf ers blynyddoedd fel y Siwan yn sôn yn gynt, i gael y berthynas yna rhwng i adran ieithoedd modern nhw gyda ni fel ysgolion clwstwr, ac mae'r gwersi yna ni'n derbyn yn wythnosol gyda yr adran Ffrangeg, yr adran Almaeneg, yn werthfawr tu hwnt. Mae'n galluogi fod pob plentyn yn cyrraedd blwyddyn 7 gyda'r un dealltwriaeth, ac wedyn mae'n rhoi man cychwyn a sylfaen gadarn iddyn nhw wedyn yn yr uwchradd i ddatblygu hynny ymhellach, yn lle bod nhw'n dechrau ym mlwyddyn 7 gyda Llechen Lan. Mae'r gwaith caled wedi cael ei wneud o flaen llaw gyda'r lefel geiriau yma, ac yna mae nhw wedyn yn yr uwchradd yn gallu datblygu hwnna ymhellach wrth ddatblygu dealltwriaeth nhw mewn ffordd. O ran gyda ni, mae'r Ffrangeg yn amlwg yn digwydd o flwyddyn 3 i fyny, felly mae gyda nhw sail o ran gwybodaeth cyn bod nhw'n cyrraedd flwyddyn 5 a 6, felly mae hwnna'n cryfhau i dealltwriaeth nhw ymhellach. Ond gyda'r Almaeneg, mae'n hollol newydd iddyn nhw, felly maen nhw'n cael y 2 flynedd yna. Mae yr ysgol yn danfon pecyn o waith i ni yn dymhorol, felly mae yna rhyw 4 pecyn dwi'n credu maen nhw'n cyflawni yn ystod eu cyfnod nhw yn y cynradd, sydd wedyn yn rhoi sail eitha cadarn iddyn nhw ar gyfer eu hamser nhw'n blwyddyn 7.
A gan mai Glan Taf sy'n arwain ar hynna, mae'r dilyniant yn amlwg achos mae pob un ysgol gynradd sydd yn rhan o'r clwstwr yn rhan o'r weithgarwch. Felly maen nhw yn gwybod faint o brofiad sydd gan y plant ac yn gwybod wedyn o ble maen nhw'n cychwyn, sydd gobeithio yn osgoi ail wneud. Felly adolygu sydyn sy'n ni'n dychmygu, ond bod nhw'n tyfu ar y wybodaeth blaenorol sydd gan y plant i gyd.
Diolch. We're going to move now on to Jess's presentation from Cowbridge. So over to you, Jess.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about how we've developed spontaneous speaking at Cowbridge School, which was highlighted in the recent Estyn thematic review. So on to the next slide then. We chose to prioritise spontaneous speaking because we want pupils to become confident, independent communicators in the target languages. For us, it's important that pupils experience language as something they use, not just something that they write down or memorise. Making speaking a natural, everyday routine helps build resilience, creativity, and a much deeper understanding of how language works. We also believe that if pupils feel supported and comfortable taking risks, they will communicate more authentically and enjoy the subject more. So our aim has been to build a talk-rich environment from year 7 onwards, where speaking feels normal, enjoyable, and accessible to all pupils. Across the department, we share some clear principles. Communication comes first and accuracy follows. Relationships and atmosphere matter. Pupils need to feel safe attempting language. Pronunciation routines happen from early on in Key Stage 3, and opportunities for spontaneous speaking are embedded consistently from year 7. A key message is that mistakes are part of the learning process. So on to the next slide. We often start lessons by revisiting a known sound, for example, recalling bonsoir before we introduce toi in year 7. Pupils frequently try new words before explicit teaching, which helps to build their resilience and ability to see new language. We also embed target language words in English sentences. For example, because I was feeling malade, and then pupils infer meaning and then use the word themselves in a new context. This presents as a low stakes game, which encourages an understanding and engages pupils. These small routines help pupils feel comfortable interacting with the language. Onto the next slide then, there's some examples of the activities that were mentioned on the previous slide. So a key part of our work has been reducing dependence on scaffolds. We use a low stakes last letter game where pupils take turns giving a word that begins with the final letter of the previous word. We structure questioning so that pupils start with short, closed answers and gradually move into longer, more open responses. We teach sentence building explicitly using high utility chunks. And from year 7, we train pupils to use online dictionaries effectively so that they can personalise language and avoid relying on memorised paragraphs. And this slide shows some examples of the activities that I mentioned. So on to the next slide then. We use praise deliberately in our lessons. We are open about mistakes being normal. Peer correction is supportive rather than critical, and we embed that from our first language lesson. We also listen in carefully during any activity so that we can plan the next steps. And our Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5 speaking clubs allow pupils to use the language in fun, low-pressure contexts. Correction is minimised in these sessions, so pupils focus on communication and developing confidence ahead of accuracy. And the next slide shows some of the activities that were mentioned on the previous slide. Posters with high frequency speaking phrases are in all of our classrooms to encourage spontaneous speech as well. So since developing our approach to spontaneous speaking in the classroom, we've seen a clear shift in pupils' behaviour and confidence. Pupils give longer, more natural answers without waiting for scaffolds. They take more risks, they draw on vocabulary from previous learning, and they personalise what they say. Progression into GCSE and A-level has improved, particularly in spontaneous speaking. And overall, lessons feel more communicative and pupils are more confident. Thank you.
Great, thanks Jess, that was really interesting. Again, remember to pop your questions into the chat, and maybe if I start, because I was really fascinated in your report to read about that aim to produce triple linguists, and I think particularly I'd be interested to know how as an international languages department, you're working with the Welsh department in terms of that language pedagogy and the approach, the kinds of approaches you were talking about in your presentation then. Are you sharing those and sharing practice with them?
Yes, yes, definitely. So we do work closely as you know, international languages and the Welsh department. We share teaching and learning ideas, and we also do, when we plan, we make sure that we're not replicating the same topic, because pupils don't want to be talking about their local area in Welsh and then in French and then in German at the same time. So we try and make sure that it keeps it varied for our learners. We use common language and terminology when we are explaining any language features, and we also use similar language checklists when we are developing extended writing. And as well as that, in the International Languages Department, we are aware that it's a brilliant resource that we have, having a Welsh department, having pupils that have learnt Welsh from a very young age. And we are always excited to see any comparisons that we can draw between the language. Sometimes we'll point them out. We also encourage our learners to point them out as well. And that helps them to be able to use translanguaging to be able to progress with all of their languages, really, and see that it's a big process and they can all be involved, they can all help each other.
Great, that sounds like really good sharing of practice. I think we have had a question come in about it. I think it just do children receive any qualifications or accreditation for completing work? And I think this came in earlier when Ysgol Pencae were talking. So I think it was particularly thinking about earlier on in that language learning journey in primary school. How are you in any way kind of how you're giving them credit or recognising that progress, I guess, before we get to the formal GCSE qualifications later on?
No, they don't have any formal accreditation. We did once, a couple of years ago. The Mandarin provision has been in place for years, and they did sit a Mandarin exam, but they were so young and it didn't favour them really. So we did it once and we never went back because we didn't see that it was beneficial for them really. So no, it's just the joy of using the language. It's nothing. They don't get any qualification. That comes later on in the secretary.
Great. And I think what's come across from both your presentations, and from the report that Matthew's done, is that focus on encouraging a love for language learning and the confidence to make mistakes, to kind of use it with confidence, really. So that's been really lovely. We're coming towards the end of our time. I can't believe how quickly it's gone. Thank you everyone for your inputs. I know there is another question about our approach to inspection. We do visit already language lessons across primary and secondary schools as part of inspections. And if there was something particular, I guess we'd report by exception as we do for other things, but we can maybe answer that a bit more fully following the session as well. And please take the opportunity following the session. If you have got questions, it's prompted, carry on emailing us. You can email at communications@estyn.gov.wales and we will get back to you. So if you have any questions based on what you've heard today or read in the report, then please get in touch. So thank you, all of you, for joining us, and a special thank you to Matthew, to Siwan, to Aled, and to Jess for your really interesting inputs. Thank you. And remember the report, some podcasts, which also features Siwan, in case you want to hear a little bit more about Pencae's work, and some other resources are all available on our website. So please go and have a look. And on behalf of us all here at Estyn, diolch yn fawr. Thank you, and hope you all have a lovely evening. Hwyl fawr. Diolch pawb.